you when walking.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited that you're here. Had a fascinating conversation in this episode with Kyle Dean as he talks about and shares his faith journey as a man, as a husband, as a father, and now certainly as an entrepreneur as he gets his YouTube channel and his coaching business off the ground. Great conversation. You're going to want to tune in and listen. If you're not already, subscribe, like, do all the things that you do on YouTube here, and certainly hop over to his channel at the Red Dawn and check it out, subscribe, and tune in. It's going to be a great conversation. So follow along with that. Also, we have the store that is open now. So it's actually filled with some pretty cool gear. Would love it if you took a look at some of these great little goods. So put together some cool swag from mugs to t-shirts, and we actually have a great partnership with Jesse over at Newhouse Leatherworks to make these incredible journals. And actually what I should do is look at this journal. This thing is incredible. I am a huge fan of journaling. I have been doing it since I was like 23. It has been just a great way of capturing the Lord's work in my life, to be able to see the vocational journey, to be able to put down my prayer language and see growth in the midst of that. As you look backwards and you see, wow, I can't believe I learned that. I can't believe I grew through that. These are stunning. These are beautiful. Take a look at that. These are just handheld Righteous Co. journals handmade by Jesse over at Newhouse Leatherworks. You don't want to miss it. We got those for sale up there, as well as some inserts that actually just kind of go along for the ride. So this way you can create your volumes and put them up on your shelf and collect over the years as you just write down and share your journey as well. So check that out. Take a look at the store. Would love it if you bought something, because that's what we do. There's cool stuff out there. And on top of that, get yourself a journal. And maybe it's not my journal. Maybe it's somebody else's journal. But you should journal, because it's actually just such a great thing. And it becomes a way of, especially for us dads, to be able to share our journey with our kids, who will never know us at this age. They'll never know our hopes and dreams for being in your 30s, being in your 40s. They might get to know you as dad, but not in the way that you really want to share some of those big life lessons. It's a great way of creating a heritage piece that you can pass on, not only to your kids, but to pass on to your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. Just thinking ahead here, would you want to be able to share who you are right now with them when they're older? And the answer to that, I'm sure for any man who's sitting there looking at their baby girl, baby boy, their little kid, even if they're teenagers, and saying, hey, this is how I thought, this is how I prayed, and this is who I am. I want to pass this on. And you never know when the Lord calls you home, and you have that written down for them, right? You have your internal thoughts for them forever. So it's just a great way of being able to take what it is that you have and passing that on. You can also start a YouTube channel, put that on there too. They can follow along for as long as YouTube is up, right? But there's something different about having a journal with you that you can just have in your hands, that you can write on the go. And especially taking out into the woods, taking up on a mountain, which is what I have done with this thing. You just take it everywhere. Take it to the chapel, take it to church, coffee shops, whatever. It's versatile. Kind of like your story. Anyways, that's that. We're going to get to the show. So thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Iron Ore Podcast. I am here today with a special guest. His name is Kyle Dean, and we're going to get into who he is and what he's doing and all the things that he's impacting, not only just in ministry, but also in business as well. We're going to get into that. But this podcast is for the productively faithful man. So if you are a productive and faithful man, this is for you. So I want you to stay around here all the way through. We're going to have some fun today. We're sipping on tea and coffee, so you should probably grab something too. And throw us on in the background. And enjoy this because it's going to be a good one. So with that, we're going to jump in here and get started. So what's going on, Kyle?
Living the dream, man. How are you?
Oh, living it. Living the dream.
Yes.
This is the dream, you know?
Do you remember when we met?
No.
Jeremy Dolph's wedding.
Was that it?
It was. We were at the same table, and we connected. We had a moment. We actually had a moment where it was like, hey, you know, this. I've been doing stuff in the young adult world. I'm doing this and that and whatever. At the time, I was involved in a couple different ministries. And from that point on, you were like this sage that people sometimes, you know, would connect with and go to for wisdom. And, you know, we had the famous meeting at Spot Coffee with Jake when you gave us some tips when we were getting Dynamis up and running here in the Western New York area. And from there, though, we just both got involved in similar niches with like young adult ministry. And you were doing your thing at St. Greg's with Amped and Elevate. And I was doing the things with Dynamis. But I'm honored that we are here and now to sync up and hopefully lead souls to Christ with the wisdom we've gleaned.
Well, hey, man, that's what this is about. You know, I think the charge on the heart, and you probably share this too, is that call of discipleship, right? Is to go out and make disciples. And I think the Lord has certainly paved different ways for us, but certainly along linear paths. You know, you've done some ministry, but you've also been in industry as well. So, I mean, yeah, here we are across the table. We're going to be doing some chatting. I think this is going to be good. So,
let's go.
Yeah, let's get at it. So let's just start from the basics. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and especially with the Rich Dawn, because this is a project we're throwing on here. You've got a YouTube channel. You've broken ground with doing some coaching. You're doing a number of different great works here, but certainly with that faithful heart. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that is, and we can kind of roll from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Rich Dawn has a lifelong significance for me. This is a project that has developed after a lifetime of reflection, a lifetime of prayer experience, and pain, suffering, triumph over tribulation, and it is, you know, my way to give back to the community on a more personal level than with things that I have been called to in the past. So, you know, a lot of people and a lot of our audience are going to know me with my work in Dynamis, Western New York. And that was something that I was appointed. I was asked to do that, and by our local ordinary to be the young adult ministry that connects the different parishes throughout Western New York, throughout the diocese, which kind of felt like a blessed task, but also an impossible one, because, you know, when we really got involved in that, you learn a lot. You learn so much about what does and doesn't work, the openness or the lack of openness in people's hearts. And, you know, what does collaboration look like across, you know, so many different parishes that have very distinct needs, very distinct charisms, and goals, really. So as we continue to learn and adapt and strengthen and build and develop fellowship, I kind of discovered by accident that I'm an entrepreneur. In my mind, it wasn't what I was going for, because, you know, I've got a solid education from an RIT background. You had alluded to, you know, I've got a lot of experience in industry. I've worked in more than one Fortune 500 company. I've basically climbed to the top of the corporate ladder, and I've seen what there is to see there. But I always just came back to this servant's heart. Like, how do I give my greatest gift of self? Right? We all have 24 hours in the day, 168 hours in the week. What are we going to do with it? And so I'm really kind of defined by some of the biggest events and things that had happened from early on in life, and then as I developed in my faith life to kind of come to this point. So
Now, I'm a huge mission guy, and I love identity. Yes. So how did you pick the Rich Don? Like where did the name come from? Like how do you identify with that? Like what does that mean?
Yeah. No, I appreciate you asking. It's funny. I came prepared to answer that because I can't stand talking about myself. It like makes me. I'm very much. Have you ever heard of like the Secret Service training the Secret Service agents get?
Tell me about it.
I've got a number of friends in the agency, and what they're trained up on is identity versus instrumentality. And you need both. There's a place for both of them, but it's important to rest in your identity. But then you got to get to the instrumental part, because what they find is that if you're going to be a part of a team, if you're going to collaborate well with people, and you're going to accomplish a mission, it can't be all identity. It's got to be instrumentality, and they kind of weed out the identity people, and that's just the people that are more identity heavy. But you need both.
Tell me about instrumentality. What do you mean by that?
So instrumentality is, in my mind, is resting in what your identity is, and then getting to the serving part. So it's focusing on the greater good. But that being said, I got to answer your question. So the identity, right, which is kind of the foundation. And again, like I said, there's a place for it. It's not like one's good or bad. It's an observational statement, not a judgment statement. And so the Rich Dawn, begins from my origins. I come from the Rich Dawn, and to the Rich Dawn, I hope to return someday. And it's a multi-entendre. At least triple entendre meaning. So one is touching on my upbringing, right? So how I came into life and faith. I am the product of a broken home. So my parents divorced when I was 2. They were trying to work on it, and the final straw was they were going to go to Catholic Charities to get some counseling for their marriage. And the representative told them, why don't you start dating other people to try to save your marriage, which is not a Catholic position. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. My parents divorced, and that set the stage for my life, which had a lot of trauma, a lot of, tough stuff. And, broken home, raised by babysitters, glorified orphan, essentially. And it allowed for an environment of being targeted. I was targeted in school, bullied a lot, just savagely. My mom tried to shift me to Catholic school one year to get away from it, and it actually was worse. Which was very strange. And then we went back to public school, and babysitters, was introduced to impurity at a far too young of an age. Basically there were babysitters that they just put us in front of a television to play video games, and that was it. They didn't want anything to do with us because they were busy, drinking and doing whatever they were doing. Their kids were underage alcoholics, beat us up a lot, and I almost died a few times. Someone jumped on me while I was underwater in a pool, and that was just insane. But I didn't know how to manage all of that. It was just weird. And so I took solace in video games, because there was a television and there was a Super Nintendo system. And that thing literally raised me in a certain way. And I became
Papa Mario.
Papa Mario in the clutch, man. Yeah, lots of Mario Kart, lots of Super Mario World. And I memorized the whole game. I think there's 96 levels. I know all the little secrets. The little red dot means dual exit. All this stuff. So I became a super good gamer, and that was my escape from the just all the violence. And so my faith identity was strange at first because, it's kind of outside of the scope of this kind of an environment, but I was, targeted also by a predator starting at age 7 in my local church. And so that was a problem, but we didn't realize that's what was going on at the time. Every Christmas Day, these pictures were being collected of me on the altar, and that was used later in a compromising manner. And so the reason that I'm bringing this up, and by the way, I am like a sanguine temperament. I'm like one of the happiest dudes you'll ever meet. I'm a comedian. I love making people laugh. So I realized that we're kind of starting like almost doom and gloom sending out the gate, but it's not. And that's where we're going to get to, is the power, the transforming power of Jesus Christ and the ability to adapt and overcome. So, this was kind of the layout, bouncing back and forth. And listen, I love my parents, and I think they both did the best they could with what they had. I mean, I'm grateful for the gift of life. I'm grateful for having, to some extent, both parents there, sort of. I mean, I was really raised by women, predominantly, my mother and my grandmother, and I'm very thankful for that as well, because I have.
God bless the matriarchs.
Oh my goodness, man! And I'm super tuned into the feminine genius. I've had a number of girlfriends in my day, and we just had incredible experiences and everything else. So. So there was a lot of good that came out of it, but it's not the way God designed it. It's not. I remember many years later being introduced to the social justice popes in the late 1800s. You're thinking of like your Blessed Pius IX, your Leo XIII, phenomenal mystic pope. And they wrote like, your Rerum Novarum Casti Connubii. And I was weeping when I would read these, because it lays out like every child has a right to 2 parents under one roof. Like it is a right that no one is supposed to get in the way of. But instead, we had a predator that identified that I was easy pickings and kind of went to, took advantage of the situation. So, but I was in CCD, and I remember being positively impacted by that and thinking like, I thought Jesus was awesome. And like, who is this guy that can like just turn the other cheek when in the face of adversity? So I actually like adopted that. Like that was something I remember really clinging on to, because whenever I would get slammed into the wall in school, like it was literally like just a routine. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get the crap beat out of me, and then I'm going to go home and play video games. And I just remember like I actually made a devotion out of turning the other cheek. And just like, it was actually not good, like in the sense that I wish that I had a father figure to be like, just punch that dude in the nose, man, just once, and just end it. That didn't come till high school, but but I did. I was faithful in the ways that I knew how, by just getting these little like breadcrumbs of like, there's a better way to live your life. I remember one day I just was like praying in the bus in middle school, and the kids that would normally pick on me were like, "What are you doing?" And like, I was just like, I realize I look like a total weirdo right now, but I don't fit in anywhere anyway. So I'm just going to go with it. And they actually like let off.
Look at this Jesus freak.
Yeah. It's you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You know what I mean?
Well, it might as well look like a fool doing it,
Hey,
fool for Christ.
Fool for Christ, baby.
Yeah.
So, and then here's where it gets all exciting. High school happened. All of a sudden, I'm this really tall dude. No one's picking on me anymore. I've got these smoking hot chicks that are super interested in me. Like, things are just clicking all of a sudden. And I'm just like, well, what is this? Like, life is actually pretty awesome, man. And it was at that point that my mom, God bless her, put me into the YMCA to be a counselor. And that was my first job. And that laid the foundation for the rest of my life, and really planted probably the biggest seed when it comes to really wanting to be involved in ministry. I was in charge of everybody from the kinder campers, which was like your 4-year-olds, up to the navigators. And you had the discoverers and the trailblazers, and they had it all distinguished by age. And I was in charge of everybody at different times. And I learned the power of healing through service, through focusing on something other than yourself, being able to make a positive impact. And it became my everything. So I started doing that. I started making all these friends, and I just remember like that forever formed me. I will not tolerate bullying. I can't stand it. If I see it, I will shut it down immediately. I was the dude, like, I remember when there was the one chick that was totally, like, quirky, and she was an easy target. I actually, like, stood up for her one day knowing that all of the beatings were going to come my way as a result of it. And I actually kind of made that into a devotion. Like, I started praying to God, like, God, let me take the suffering so that other people don't have to. And it worked. It worked. I mean, they kind of let off from her for a while. So now I'm starting to serve. Things are starting to turn bright. And I'm realizing, like, I got a whole life ahead of me to live here. Like, this is great. And so I became a class clown. The one thing too that worked very well in my favor, and I'm incredibly grateful to God for this gift, is that I have a really high IQ, like a top percentile. And so any subject you throw at me is very easy for me. And so I was a straight A student, and I didn't have to work hard. I was one of those kids that the kids want to, hey, can you help me out with the notes and whatever? And so that was probably one of my biggest saving graces, because even though I was dealing with a lot of heaviness, at least I wasn't like failing in school, and that was like another thing weighing on me. So I became a class clown throughout high school. I was like, oh man, get along great with people. Like I was that kid in school that like doesn't fit in with any specific group, but gets along with everybody. I was tight with the jocks, with the band kids, with the goths, with the, like the preps, the Aeropostale, remember that? And the hood kids with the South Pole, Yep.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
The whole gamut, the parachute pants, those were still big back then. And so I was just crushing it with everybody. And so life was good. Life was good. I was a class clown because the school came really easy for me. So I just wanted to entertain. I just started entertaining people. I had a bunch of people come up to me in graduation and say, you literally got me through high school. I cannot thank you enough. Just all of your quirkiness and whatever. So I was like, you know what? That's my thing. Like, people were saying, I think you're going to be a stand-up comedian someday. And I was like, I don't know. Is that my greatest gift of contribution? I don't know. But, I incorporated it in different ways. So now I'm off to college. And by the way, I was an atheist throughout high school. Someone like scribbled a Marilyn Manson quote at me in like detention or something. And I thought it was witty. So I was like, I don't believe in God.
So where did that start to collapse for you? Because faith was something that you were engaging with. Yeah. Jesus was someone who you found intriguing. Did it just kind of melt away, or was it something that that you found atheism attractive?
It's a great question. I honestly, man, part of it was just teen angst. Another part of it was because of, the statistics say, I'm big on trying to prevent divorce. That's one of the things I'm involved with. Remind me if you want later a story about what happened in my pre-Cana where multiple people were bragging about cohabiting at the table. I don't tolerate it because that statistically it's an 80% chance you're going to divorce someday. And I don't ever want anybody to go through what I went through. So, but anyways, another statistic is that, kids listen to about like 90% of what their formation comes from the dad. And it's about 30-something% comes from the mom, right? And we know this thanks to being informed in our faith, that the men are the leaders, we're the heads, and women are the heart, right? That's the rightly ordered way of things. And Mary is the neck. Women like to be the neck, my big fat Greek wedding. Sorry, but the early church fathers actually squashed that. They said Mary is the neck. So if you reach the 9th level of prayer, maybe you're the neck. But anyways, so my dad, to answer your question, he never recovered from the Catholic Charities incident. He's spiritually dead. In fact, that became a really crushing dynamic that when I actually started growing closer in my faith, it made it so that we were not able to get closer.
Do you still see him? Is he in your life at all?
No.
Oh man, that's
No.
heartbreaking.
No, we are. I had a Francis of Assisi moment. You know, not getting naked in front of the bishop, just to be clear. But
Oh, amen for that.
yeah. Well, hey, I mean, there's precedent for it. You know, it's got to be the right time, right place. But so
Probably not in these times.
no, yeah, I know it is
He was
different.
able to get away from.
No, it's funny you say that, man. People say like if you actually experience what the saints experience, you have a very serious risk of going into an insane asylum.
Oh, I believe that.
It's true because they're actually informed with Soviet principles. That's a whole nother topic. But anyways, yeah, people that are very deep in their faith have to be careful sometimes, depending on the way that it gets expressed. But that's, something we'll get into because I want to touch on the 9 levels of prayer with you. That's more like level 7 and 8 of prayer. But anyways, so to succinctly answer your question, the father figure role in my life, and giving up on church made it seem like it was okay for me to do that too. Yeah. So that's where that came from. And it broke my mom's heart, and I feel terrible that it happened, but it helped to develop, where everything ended up. So, just part teen angst, part just the confusion of identity, of being given so many mixed messages. And so went off to college, got placed. I went to, for people who are local know about Rochester Institute of Technology, very good school, top 3 computing school in the nation. And they pick your classes for you. At least they did when I went. When you start going there, you don't get to choose what you do. It's ingrained in your major. And at the time, I got a really high SAT score. I got accepted into 8 colleges, and I was like, I want to make video games. So, it's like, I like these things. They got me through life.
Well, I mean, it's a career.
Yeah, no question. So they put me into Intro to Philosophy because you need to have a really good understanding of metaphysics and logic if you're going to be a programmer. And that was my first love. That was the biggest seed planted that I've ever had. In terms of really just going all in on my faith. Philia Sophia, the love of wisdom. Who cannot fall in love with wisdom? I mean, it's the sexiest thing there is, if I may. So I'm all in. I am learning from all the different great thinkers, took Western philosophy, took Eastern philosophy, took a bunch of psychology courses, learned the ropes on all things humanity. Right, like cultural anthropology, sociology, persuasion, rhetoric, the fine arts, all these different things, and I just absolutely loved it. But the philosophy, when the way it was presented to me at first, it was slipshod. It was like all these different disparate systems that had nothing to do with each other, and that was frustrating. There's like a psychological tension there. And I didn't like that. I was like, I want to crack this Rubik's Cube, So I had thrown a Bible that I was gifted for confirmation into a box when I got carted off to college as a concession to God. I guess I'll have that available if I need it. And when I finished this philosophy class, I got a prompting to start reading the Bible. And I only ever really thumbed through Revelation in high school. Someone was like, the end of the world's in there, man. You got to get into that. And I read it, and I was like, this is all code words. I don't know what I'm reading. But that's all I had. And so I decided it's time to start on page 1. Let's go. Genesis on.
In the beginning.
That's it, man.
Kyle read it.
Yeah, well, it started. And then so did the mystical experiences. Very strange, Adam. Very strange. We're going to put our Dr. Strange hats on now. So I started having these. First, there was this profound sense of unity with the Lord. There's this super deep empathy. I wept. And by the way, I'm not a weepy guy, just to get that out of the way. You know, I'm kind of tapping into some of the most profound moments of my life all in one shot here. But, you know, so this was like unexpected when it happened. It's like, well, what was that? You know, there's like the happening, and then there's the meta-analyzing. Like, what does this mean? And it was like, there is something to this Bible. Like, I am feeling a connection to the divine. I'm feeling God call me and draw me closer to him. So I kept going. And I was 18 going on 19. And I just, you know, got through most of the Bible. And then I had a near-death experience one day. I was dating this woman at the time who had told me that she was an atheist and that she didn't believe in the concept of sin. And one thing to understand about me, especially like childhood Kyle, is that I truly believe that naivete is a form of protection. It can be, because for all of the robbed innocence that, and the things that had happened to me in my youth, I was a really good kid and I was really innocent. I don't know how. It's just God's grace. But I would go into situations like genuinely like, I don't even like know what to, when my girlfriend was like, I don't believe in sin. I was like, how can you, like, what? Like, even when I was an atheist, I was like, there's sin. Like, you know, like it was a concept that was so foreign to me at the time in my youth. And I wrestled with that. Like, genuinely, I was like, well, wait a minute. Does that mean we're going to stay together? Like, I think this is the one. I always thought everyone was the one. I was like an idiot, just a total moron when it comes to relationships for a while. I'm pretty good at it now, by the way, you know. That's my pitch, actually, for life coaching. I'm terrible at relationships. Sign up. No. So
That's how you learn, right? We were talking about that before.
Yeah.
What are failures, you know?
Yeah. Oh, so. Yeah. Right before we got on, we were talking about entrepreneurship, and I'd heard a quote that a billionaire had stated that when you climb to the mountain of success, whatever that success means for you, you have to define it, align it, and accomplish it. You look back, and the mountain you climbed is the heaping pile of all your failures, right? It's truer words than ever spoken in that secular realm. So, but I'm in the Logos right now, right? I'm dealing with the divine words, and I'm dealing with this girlfriend who's throwing these foreign concepts at me, and I'm trying to square, like, where do I fit in with all of this? And then the near-death experience happens. It was very strange, man. Like, I was actually going to go pick her up from work at the time, and like a total dork, I was like reading the Bible looking for the answer to prove to her that God exists, without realizing how flawed that logic could be for some people, because they're just going to be like, I don't appeal to this, so why are you appealing to this? But anyway, at the time I thought it would work. So I was about to try to prove God's existence to her. Like, I found this money verse where I was just like, this is the one. And I was almost to my destination, and I started feeling this euphoria throughout my body. It started with tingling in my hands, and it started spreading and spreading and spreading. And then I was at first I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, it just felt great. And, you know, by the way, sober as a bird, you know, nothing altering involved whatsoever. And, but then as I kept going, I was like, I need to park. Like, something's up. And I did. I made it just in time. And then all of a sudden, this was, by the way, 17 years ago, whether in the body or out of the body, I know not, Adam. But I was thrusted into the divine light. I was completely and totally enveloped by this blinding light that was 1,000 times brighter than the sun, and just completely dominated. And just, I remember the last thought I had before going into it was, I'm never going to see my mom again. This is it. Going to heaven. And then I came to. And next thing I know, I'm clutching my Jeep steering wheel, screaming, "No, God, please, no, not yet. People still need my help here." And now I'm meta-analyzing. Why did those words come out of my mouth? Like, what does that mean? That's kind of weird, man. You know? And so that was a really, really profound moment in my life that set the stage for almost a decade of very, very deep soul searching. I started devouring every world religion I could get my hands on, all of them, like Zoroastrianism in ancient Persia, Taoism with, the Tao Te Ching that Lao Tzu wrote, one of the top 3 books of human history, the 4 Vedas of Hinduism, or the Sunata Dharma as they refer to it, Confucianism, reading all of Confucius, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Hermes Tablets, occultism, unfortunately, like everything, because I wanted to understand what was that, like what did that mean, and the Bible, thank God, and so I just kind of I started falling into this like New Age trapping, where it was like, well, I'm super, super spiritual. And I was like, and I'm crunk for Jesus. Like, I was like, I believe in God. The Bible was kind of the thing that started all of this. But I was confused, man, for a while. I was like, I don't know how to interpret what just happened to me. And so I was on a quest. I was on the philosopher's quest to follow the truth wherever it leads, regardless of the personal cost. And that was a quest that came with a lot of suffering, a lot of confusion from others. I started talking about God a lot. Believe it or not, that makes people uncomfortable.
No. Are you uncomfortable on the podcast?
Yeah.
Are you squirming a little bit?
Should be. I wanted to get you back in the mix because, like I said, I hate talking about myself. And
well, you're building off of that priming question, right?
Yep.
Where does the rich dawn come from? And so you're highlighting the architecture that leads to that, right? So what some of that backdrop story is that forms the mission that you have at hand.
Yeah.
So you're on this journey where God has called you into this, and certainly He has pulled you through a lot of experiences, including what you were just sharing there.
Yep.
How does that tee up what you're doing today? So where does that line this up and say, I'm going to do something with what has been handed to me, and now I'm going to take that accumulated knowledge and experience, and I'm going to propel that forward.
Yep.
So how did that all just come together? How did that formulate into what this movement is?
Yeah. So I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. I'm a big fan of chronology, but I'm gonna dial it up here. So on the quest, right, from 17 and change years ago, and I went to all these different avenues to try to get answers. I went to a Catholic priest. It was the first time I ever went to a priest outside of a church setting, and ended up being abused. And I went to that meeting with the intention of getting answers for what happened to me. I thought, you got to go to a priest for this stuff, right? Like they're the ones that are supposed to know and have the answer. And in retrospect, I realized that, there is something so profoundly important and good happening in all of this, what God is doing for the Western New York community, that there had to be the evil. The evil had to be there, because it was an affirmation that there's going to be blockages, because the devil's, he's an envious, pathetic loser. He's not creative, he's not interesting, and he gets very scared when things like this happen. So I tried to go through the normal channels, blockages after blockages after blockages, and then finally, fast forwarding to 10 years ago. In fact, we're at the 10-year and a couple of, like a week or two anniversary right now of I'm glad you're sitting. The Blessed Mother visited me. The Queen Mother of the universe, actually condescended herself and came to me. This was after what happened with the priest. And all that I'm allowed to reveal right now, I did a deep sync with my spiritual director last night preparing for this podcast and what I'm allowed to reveal. And all I can say is she said, as clear as day, be my advocate. So that became the discernment. What do you mean? Like, you're the advocate. You're the advocate of all advocates. You're the mediatrix of all grace. And if that's misunderstood, it could be understood in a heretical notion. But properly understood, and this is extremely orthodox and in line with the Catholic faith, she's referring to an intercessory role. And so sometimes when things don't happen in the natural order the way that they're supposed to, right? Like divorce, like people who fall short of their vocation. Sometimes God will come in himself directly and right the ship. St. Teresa of Avila, who's my best friend, ended up being, out of all those things I had researched, they can't hold a candle to Teresa of Avila. She actually, it's almost like she was writing to me when she was explaining, this is what you went through, this is what this means, this is how to handle it, and thank God, I am eternally indebted to her work. And my best friend. So she explains, and this is ironic because a lot of people don't understand this. People love a Padre Pio, right? Like he's my boy, but he had these ecstasies and he had these mystical experiences and this and that and everything. Those are actually crutches. St. Teresa of Avila describes those as crutches. For a human being to be experiencing ecstasy is actually, scientifically speaking, an indication of our weakness. It's actually because we're so corrupt. So, there's a deep science to all of this, but that happened. Thanks be to God, I finally got in touch with a solid priest who started to steer me in the right direction. And you better believe, firmly planted me immediately with a spiritual director, right? Like, you need a spiritual director, which is absolutely the case if you're ever dealing with alleged spiritual experiences. And so for the past 10 years, I have been put under a fine-tooth comb and poured over with my entire spirituality and everything that I've been through and everything else. And finally, just this year, this is a big year for me, and this has a lot to do with moving forward and fulfilling the mission that God has laid out. I've been affirmed in my spiritual gifts. The church, I've worked with Bishop Michael William Fisher. He knows. I've explained to him in way more detail than what we're talking now. What I've allegedly experienced. He told me this is what you're supposed to do. And through that specific channel, it's like, yep, this is legit. Because when you're going through something like this, it's always it comes from one of three sources. It's either yourself, i.e. delusional, the devil, or God, which means you have a 66.6% chance of it not being of God. You got to be so careful when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, man, that was the beginning of me being a practicing Catholic. After all of the confusion, after all of the mixed messages growing up, after the failures with people who should have known better, God directly came, righted the ship, and blessed me with a specific mission to spread the Great Commission, the gospel. And specifically under the aspect of Mariology, to be an advocate for the Queen Mother means to fulfill, there's a ton of mystics over the recent centuries who have touched on this, that right now, in this era of church history, we are entering a period where Mary is going to raise up a bunch of super soldiers who are deeply devoted to her. And that's going to meet the evil of this generation. It's some refer to it as ushering in the era of peace, the era of Mary. I'm sure you've heard of like maybe the 3 days of darkness, and there's so many different things that are out there, and some are approved, some are kind of you have to be careful with apparitions. But I'm talking about the strictly church-approved apparitions, right? Like Our Lady of Good Success, Quito, Ecuador, 1610, February 2nd. Our Lady said that they're beginning the second half of the 20th century, i.e., right now. There's going to come a time when there will be almost no faithful priests left on earth. There will be almost no virgin souls left on earth. And of course, and you fast forward with Our Lady of Fatima, right? She's one of the biggest ones that people know about nowadays, in 1916, 1917, and thereafter. But especially in 1917, she stated on July 13th that souls are, present tense, falling into hell like snowflakes. And that was 100 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So there's a serious issue in this generation with chastity, with all things purity. And also, I would argue, in the young adult world, we'll get into that in a bit here. We'll turn this more into a kitten play. Sins of the tongue. I think sins of the tongue are sending a lot of souls in the wrong direction. A fundamental failure to understand what gossip is, and detraction and calumny and how these things work, and when you're crossing the line on that, and also the recipient. If you ever notice somebody doing this, like, you are duty bound to shut them down immediately. And very few people understand these basics, and these are the things that we're gonna address with the life coaching. But and that we've already done so much with Dynamis. But so the long short of it is, I have officially revealed to you some of the most profound experiences I've ever had in my entire life. The Rich Dawn, I said it was at least a triple entendre. It's the scientific, theological, and philosophical understanding of my identity in the Lord, who I truly am, and how I am called to be instrumental in building up Christ's kingdom here on earth as Mary's advocate.
So this is going to create a lot of chatter. Anybody that's tuning in, faithful Catholics, not Catholics, atheists, whoever.
Bring it on.
Actually, I'd be really interested to hear some of the comments here, because the things that you say are going to be hard to hear for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And it's definitely worth chatting. So if you have any questions or comments, you can put it down here. I'm sure you could probably jump in and answer some of those.
Let's go.
But
happy to serve. That's what we're here to do, right?
Okay, so you get to this place where you have this immense call, right? How did you put traction to deciding what comes first, right? So you sit down, you're in the planning phase, and you're trying to figure out, like, what action steps do I take first? How did you craft out the dream? Like, what was some of your process of, like, all right, here's the pieces I'm going to move first. Maybe I'm going to test A and B here. Like, how did you plot out what some of that architecture looks like? Like, what did that look like?
Sure. If you don't mind my answering with a question back to you first, because I know with Righteous and the incredible work that you're doing here, it's dream, do, and be, right? There's a systematic process of unlocking your full potential here. What is your dream life like? And I mean it like actual dreaming, not necessarily planning.
It's a good question. It starts in prayer. I mean, it's all rooted in prayer.
Your actual, like, when you go to sleep at night? I'm talking about physical dreaming.
So I pray for dreams, and I have ever since I was a kid.
That's super cool, man. Thank you so much for sharing. That's intimate.
So even when I was a kid, one of the nighttime prayers, I would just pray for good dreams. And the Lord has definitely moved within my dreams in some pretty awesome ways. And I keep a journal, and I've cataloged some of those dreams along the way.
Yes. But I do the same, man. I'm glad. You're giving me a lot of comfort by sharing that.
That's the root of where everything else is kind of flourished from. And so, in the midst of that, in those prayers, I mean, certainly I've had fun dreams. I remember my dreams very well. I don't dream every night anymore, and that's something that's new. because I used to have very vivid dreams. Like they say you don't dream in color, but like, no, I dream in color. I'm like, no, I remember.
I remember
certain
flipping
colors,
a switch in one of my dreams, and that's when I started becoming lucid all the time.
And I think that colors definitely have their purpose, and I've read of people explaining dreams like that. I don't spend a lot of time.
Have you ever seen Waking
thinking
Life?
about that. No.
I feel like you'd really enjoy it. It's not overtly Christian, but they have a little bit of that in there mixed with whatever else. But it was a movie that hit me big in high school. It came out in like 2000. It had like super early Alex Jones in it. But only as like a few second, he was like a feature in there. But it was it was an animated film with all different animations, and it's like constant dreams within dreams within dreams. And I'll have to send it to you, man. Yeah. Not like Inception, but
Inception
different.
was awesome.
It was good. It was for Leo. He did okay that time.
If I could do this,
I don't remember all the quotes.
I need a guarantee. I can't. Yeah. I don't know what he said. I need a guarantee. I won't, but I can. Anyways, I love that movie.
Is this your anchor or is this it?
Anchor.
To know whether you're dreaming or waking.
Oh, yeah, right.
Anyway,
so
we digress.
Yeah, but I think you got to have a dream for where you're going.
100%.
And
100%.
I think when you root that in prayer, whether you're taking that into a journaling format where you're sketching out what some of your future hopes are. Maybe you have some
vision board.
Some English. I think there's a lot of ways. I used to do sticky notes. I used to just jot down back when I was super sloppy. But then I started using notebooks and kind of filling that out. But I was like, you know what? I'm kind of done with notebooks because once I'm done with a notebook, I'm not carrying all of my notebooks with me. So then I started using Evernote, where I'm able to keep everything kind of nice and organized. So I put everything kind of in that way. But, then you have to lay out what your goals and your architecture are and just get to doing them.
Yes.
But all of that just starts with setting out what is it that the Lord wants you to do. And, I think for me, when I'm crafting out what that dream has been, entrepreneurship has always been in the DNA of that. And, I've shared this on some of the other podcasts, but my dad raised us with that type of DNA, like he raised us to think those things through. Like, son, this is America. All you have to do is go and pick up the money. There's just money laying out in the streets. You just have to go out and get it. And it was one of those sayings that, like, okay, Pop. So like every time we'd say it, it'd be like, all you have to do is go out and get it. Right. And
you never appreciate it until you have to really put the blood, sweat, and tears into it.
Yeah. Well, then he put action to it. And I've told the story before, maybe once or twice, even on the podcast. So, but essentially he sent us off to a golf course after my bike was stolen. And he said, go earn it. Here's the first Pops, go get it. And he taught us how to sell, like how to think those things through and how to make it. I'm like 10 years old, and go out there and get it. Yes. And so we went out there and we got it. Then you have to buy the next round. Eventually you get your profits into buying a bike. Okay. All right. Well, that kind of worked. High school, either go get a job or make a job. Prom's coming. How are you going to pay for it?
Yes.
My friends were all getting jobs and everything. I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I think I'm going to go out and make a job. Made a job. Made the money.
Amen.
Later with Righteous, the first iteration of that was Righteous Events. And that was the first time
That was what, 2015?
10.
10, that's right.
So that was in 10. And I thought I could do the same thing over again. And so, I went out and I did some parties. I did some weddings. And I was like, okay, this is cool. But I really wanted to do something righteous, like something radical.
My man.
I was like, oh, righteous.
Yes.
And I wanted to do something awesome and cool.
I think that's one of the special levels in Super Mario World, too. There was like righteous, tubular. I don't remember all of them.
I was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle guy.
Dude,
and
yeah?
Like,
Donatello?
oh, man, it was awesome. Especially the video game of
Oh, yeah.
Nintendo.
Pizza time.
Yeah.
That's
it.
Yeah.
Used to love that, right?
Yeah.
So, but here I am. Now I'm at a point where I'm actually challenged because the other stuff came easy. And now it's like I need to build an architecture. Like I have to level it up. I'm not just some kid running around here just trying to make a buck. So like, how do I actually like pull a cohesive element together? And it wasn't until I had this paintball event. It was like my first marquee event for Righteous.
Paintball?
Paintball.
Yeah.
I played a lot of paintball growing up.
Let's go.
Loved it, totally into it. So I was like, I want this type of thing. I wanted to do like outdoor races. I wanted to do like good, mountain biking things, a lot of adventure things. I wanted to pull a lot of this stuff together. Yeah. And I was like, the easiest way I can do this, like for starts, paintball. Like we could do that. So I rented a portion of Chestnut Ridge, the county park over here, and cost a fortune, lost a fortune.
Nice work.
Yeah. So
Keeping pile of failure.
Yep. No, I had to lick my wounds from that one, but it was a nice kick in the pants because like that event was a failure, but it spurred in the next level for me of like, okay, I was able to go so far up to this point without more. And now I need more, which means I need to know how to like actually run a business. I need to know how to put these pieces together. And so that's when I went back to school for entrepreneurship, went to Canisius. And honestly, it gave a nice foundation business-wise, but I learned a lot more in action and then learning from mentors and other coaches and learning online, a lot of free learning. That helped lay out more of the dream, right? Of like, how do you put this together? And then how do you do it? Yes. And so at that point, now I'm in ministry and we're doing great work through youth ministry. Amen. Awesome. So during that time, I gave myself a window of opportunity. I'm like, I'm going to give myself 10 years to bootstrap this thing. We can do ministry and I can bootstrap Righteous along the way. Don't want to take out loans for it. I'm like, I can incrementally grow this and grow whatever competencies and experience I need along for the ride because that's going to be a benefit to the ministry as well. Like I can bring that right into serving.
Absolutely.
So
servant leadership is about creating leaders, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so praise God, he led us all the way through that. And here we are today. This year, this is month 4, just starting up month 4 of being independent with it. So,
dude, I'm so proud of you, man. I was one of your very first LinkedIn likes when you created Righteous.
Was that really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, with it's number 7 actually.
Oh.
Yeah, and
I don't know how you remember that,
because I'm a quasi savant with numbers. But so I'll give you another one. You mentioned 2010. You started it. August 6th, 2010 was one of the most intense dreams I've ever had in my life. So you asked me how did I do with the dreaming phase? I took it to a metaphysical and physical level with our conversation because from the moment I had the divine light experience, I called it the white light, by the way, for most of my life after that until I met with a mystical doctor of theology who specializes in mysticism. And he put me through a fine-tooth comb. And he said, from now on, you call it the divine light. He's like, that with the amount of charity the way that transformed you, he's like, that's this. And without belaboring the conversation. But post-divine light, I started having countless premonition dreams. I got tons of them written down. I just dream, it happens. I dream, it happens. I dream, it happens. It was very strange, dude. Very strange. And sometimes it would be within 24 hours, 48 hours, the week, the month, could be years out. But the vast majority of it really mundane. Like, just, it's like, oh, I'm Ant-Man or something. Like, you're the superhero in Marvel where you're like, all right, I got a power, but no one really cares about that one. But anyway, sorry to all the Ant-Man fans out there. Oh, I think, did we throw up a gang symbol?
Oh, we did. Oh, shoot. That's me. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring this guy back. We're going to turn you off. All right. Please hold here, folks. We're going to do a little adjusting. So we're back and continuing our dreaming talk here. So.
Yeah, dream talk. So August 6, 2010 was one of the very substantial ones. I don't know if you call it premonition so much as just a profound insight. It was a dream within a dream, and had gotten into an accident And as soon as the car crash happened, woke back up, like in my bed that I was actually sleeping in real life. Didn't realize it was still a dream. And, or is that how it happened? Or was that the first dream? It's these things are complex. But after the car crash, I ended up in a realm where there were these angelic beings who started going over with me and coaching me on every moral act I'd ever committed throughout my entire life, like bit by bit, and like judging me and like explaining what I did right, what I did wrong, what never to do again. And I was just like, just like dominated, like, okay, I'm the student. But then there was one moment when I'd like tried to get cutesy and I pushed back with them and like, oh yeah, but how about this? Cause I was like weirded out that they knew everything about me. And it had to do with like my love life. And they're like, oh no, we got a file on that too. And they pulled out this other file and they started going over all of it. And it was the moment that I doubted them that I got thrusted back into my body in real life. And Adam, if there was such a thing as goosebumps growing on top of goosebumps, like that was me when I woke up after this thing. Like it was bananas, dude. And so, yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday. And so I was actually having all these dreams and they informed. Another fun one was fall of 2011. I had a dream that Trump would be the next president. And there's living stones that heard me say that back then too. Like it's totally independently corroborated. And so what I learned by hitting the books, becoming a theology nerd much later in life, is that when you're experiencing the divine light, like if you actually read St. Teresa of Avila's Interior Castles and you get into the Sixth Mansion, there's footnotes in the Tan book that talks about the Lumen Prophetiae and the Lumen Gloriae Transiens. And that is what that light is. It says in the book of Psalms, by light we shall see light. And St. Thomas Aquinas talks about the Lumen Gloriae. The Lumen Gloriae is what Moses and St. Paul experienced famously. And those ones are hyper-focused on in Scripture because Moses was the first major teacher of the Jews, whereas St. Paul was the first major teacher of the Gentiles. And St. Thomas Aquinas explains how the Lumen Gloriae is the medium by which we are able to see God in the beatific vision. And what a lot of people don't realize, I kind of jumped ahead to the coaching part here, but what a lot of people don't realize, and every Catholic is supposed to know this, and I've met one priest out of hundreds that knows this. When Vatican II said universal call to holiness, all right, we're still good.
Watch.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here I am giving you the warning, and I
don't know if your viewers or
me.
listeners even know what just happened there. But Adam coached me up before we started that if you use specific hand gestures, it can impact the camera. So that's, anyways.
Yeah, we're working on you, Wally. That's the name of my camera up there.
We're breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
So, the universal call to holiness was actually a conclusion of a centuries-long theological debate. St. Francis de Sales, who's referred to as the doctor of the laity, was one of the first champions of helping Catholics to realize that we are all called to all 9 levels of prayer. And in fact, it's actually a duty. So that starts with knowing it, and almost no one does today. Just because there's a gap, there's a knowledge gap that needs to be filled, and that's part of what I'm fulfilling, because it's my competency, and it's the first 4 levels are ascetical. That's the ascetic way. In other words, you can do them yourself, and as we both know, having run a number of Exodus 90s, like you need to take on asceticisms in order to develop mortification, mortis facere, to make dead or to make one dead, to die to self. And when you do that, you can start tapping into the upper 5 levels of prayer, right? So there's vocal prayer, mental prayer, affective prayer, prayer of simplicity. You can do those on your own. And they go from kind of more discursive to more, obviously with simplicity, it's like more kind of all encompassing. It's a look and a love. Like you can get that in adoration, but it's not just going to adoration. It's building up the fundaments of all the previous three. Normally it takes years for people to get through these. And then you get open to the upper five levels that are purely mystical. And so, yeah, I hope that this demystifies too. If anybody's like weirded out by some of the stuff I've thrown out there, like there comes a point where it's just like when you just wake up and you're having another profound experience with the Lord. That's why St. Teresa of Avila actually discourages journaling. Because she's like, you're going to reach a point where, like, if you were to write down everything that God does when you're in the higher realms, like, you're literally not going to be practical. Like, you're just never going to get anything done. That being said, the church hasn't condemned it. Of course, we have Faustina, right? So it's a personal discernment thing. But, yep. So, is that a Padron? Dude, Nicaragua, baby. A man of great taste.
Well, these were gifted to me.
Yes. I don't know if you've ever had one, but I can guarantee you that these are excellent.
Yeah, I'm not.
Unless you're not into heavy body. Like, there's a lot of flavor.
I'm once in a while. I will. I prefer the lighter ones. But I'm not much of a cigar guy.
Sure. Me neither. I'm a big singer, but.
One of the things I'm going to be doing to treat myself to 40 here is getting a tobacco pipe that's actually on the agenda for this week.
Nice.
So that's something I'm going to start diving into in my second half. Do a little.
I love that, man.
Little flavoring.
Yeah, you should get the
taste.
Tolkien, the Capstan Blue. That's what J.R. Tolkien would smoke. It's absolutely delectable. Yeah.
There's a place over here, and I'm not getting paid to say this, but maybe I should.
Yeah.
Smokers Haven.
We both got a little work to do on our YouTube channels to get there, right?
Yeah. Hey, one step at a time.
That's exactly right.
But Smokers Haven actually has a great shop there, and I went there September and did a walkthrough and asked them to give me a little tour and tell me about the scene. Tell me about tobacco and all the pipes and everything. They actually had a lot to say about token blends, and I was like, all right, you guys are my people. This is great. This is great.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool, but haven't made the plunge yet, but it'll probably be soon. Like these are actually probably dried and dead at this point, but
no, this one's still got some suppleness.
yeah, but see, the problem is I don't have a humidor, so like,
They'll only last so long.
So to go and get these things, like, I don't really do that.
There's some like small-sized ones that aren't too expensive.
Yeah.
If you're kind of a hobbyist as opposed to getting the full-fledged.
So my sister-in-law got me these cigars for my birthday.
Yes.
And they have one of those little moisturizing packs in here. So I'm afraid to open this without a humidor. So I'm like, do I go and get a humidor?
Well, how many? You look like you got a BC's amount in there. Maybe we can get a. I'm not saying those are for us, but I would absolutely love to get you and Dan Lawson on a pod together. I think that would be fireworks for people.
Dan Lawson's the man.
Yeah.
And he's not paying me to say that either.
No, he's well, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but it's reached a point where I'm allowed to start talking about it publicly to help souls. I've been involved in the exorcism ministry for almost a decade now, and
my mom was a part of that for many years.
Yeah.
The
with,
Burning Bush.
Father DiGiulio, or Yep.
Yeah, she was on the team for a long time.
God bless her.
It's hard work.
Oh yeah, we're cursed constantly. Pray for us, please. It's funny. Some of my friends, I was running Dynamis forever, and I never tell anybody. Partially out of humility, discretion, decorum, different reasons. But and then people find out, and they're like, "Wait, what? Like you've been doing that this whole time?" And it's like, yeah, no, like every day of the week, I'm doing something for the church. And so, I remember when one of my close friends, and he knows me really well, and he's like kind of got like afraid, and he was like, like. They say that the demons go after your entire family, and like that's really dangerous. And it's like, yeah, that's why you need to pray for us. There's got to be someone that's qualified to do it, or else no one's gonna get better. You know what I mean? Like you have to understand the science of it, the fundamentals, and that's my world. I'm heavily trained in Thomistic theology as well. I guess something of a Thomist, although I see people out there that become fanboys of given saints. And it's just like running young adult ministry and having competitiveness. It's like that completely misses the mark. Like the scripture says, this isn't the church of Paul. This isn't the church of, you know what I mean? Like Barnabas or whoever. Like this is the church of Jesus Christ. We're called to be one, a la John 17. So too, when it comes to how certain things work in that realm. But let's get back to the dream question you asked me. So you asked me, how did I take this dream, find some traction, and then start doing with the calling that I was given, right?
Right, right.
So what really kind of happened there, so we're fast forwarded now. We touched on Dream 2010, Dream 2011. Here we are in 2014. And honestly, Adam, like a lot of it's intuition, right? Dream, like literally like dream interpretation, if you will, and discerning the Lord. That's why I'm so grateful that you said that. Like the reality that our viewers and listeners understand that this is like biblical stuff. Like this is normal.
Here's the thing, not everybody's actually going to understand that, right?
No, and we don't expect them to.
Yeah, but I
mean,
I
9 out of 10 Catholics contracept today, which is objectively grave matter. So
I'm thinking for somebody who might be sitting here, kind of tuning in, and maybe they're just walking in this. Maybe they're still trying to figure out, like, how do I even put together a dream? like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm trying to. I'm searching. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. So for somebody to take that in, it is important to know that the Lord is moving and wants your life. And he's going to fill in the dream of what it is that your life is meant to be. And I think for anybody who might be lost and searching in that, it's important, like, if you're lost, start with your relationship with God first, because he's going to fill in that dream. And so...
and also, we shouldn't be chasing dreams. The Catholic Church actually discourages, like trying to put a divine note on dreaming, right? Like you're supposed to just kind of rule out the natural first, right? And so I just wanted to throw that in as a caveat to.
So I think when you're going to have a vision to put traction to, let the Lord lead in it. I think you have to have a relationship with him first to say, hey, what am I doing with my life, and what do you want me to do with it? Because he's going to be the ultimate author of that. And so one of the things that I want to bring people to is just you have got to understand that God is calling you, and you don't get there by accident. The vision in front of you, the experiences that you've had behind you, is not by accident. I mean, you're being called, and so you have to answer that. You have to say yes to it. And
it's intense.
It is intense. It's hard. I mean, just even your witness here, but there's a lot of people who have their own journey, and maybe it's not on the track that you're at. Everybody is going to have their own path.
No, I don't wish this cup of suffering on anybody.
Well,
some people, again, the people that are like, oh, the ecstasies are cool or this, it's like, you don't understand the cup of suffering that goes into being at the right or the left hand of the Lord. You know what I mean? Like, there is a lot of mechanics that go into this. No, there isn't a single mystic on earth that wasn't crucified. You know what I mean? Like, you need, as Dan Lawson famously said on your podcast, there's blood on that cross. Don't be King Baby.
Well, we gotta pick up that cross and follow him. And everyone's gonna be spilling their blood on that. Yeah. And the cross looks different, for every person. But I mean, this is the way. Right. We're people of the way. So, like, get going. Yeah. So pick it up. But you can choose not to. That's free will. You can say, hey, and I don't want it. You can set it down, tune back into the video game.
I feel like I sense your dad in the way you're talking. Does he have that, like, powerful reverse psychology vibe? Like, yeah, go ahead and do what you think you're going to do, but it might come back to bite you, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm sure he's probably pulled some of that up. I mean, my dad is a strong man.
I've had father figures that were like that. I think there's a place for it.
Actually, I think you met Kyle Lucy. He was on one of the episodes before.
Yeah.
We're going to get our dads together. Actually, really soon here. We've got an episode with them.
Yes.
They're going to share a little.
Wisdom.
Two strong guys. Actually, we were raised rather similarly. So we're going to sit down. We're going to pour a couple of nice bourbons and
yes,
share some Papa wisdom. So, but we'll get
Stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe.
Oh yeah, actually, that's not something you're going to want to miss. So, but anyway, back to what we're talking about. Architecture. What came first?
So it concretely translated into I was invited to a church in the area, and happenstance, providence, whatever you want to call it, a God incidence, coincidence. They were like, "Hey, we want to get a 20s, 30s group going," and I was at the very first meeting. And they were like, "We need a few people that are like motivated, and we got to get this thing going." And I was like, "Well, I guess this is it. I'm in my 20s." And so from the very first meeting, I developed a 20s, 30s group that I won't name, and poured years of my life into that. And then all of a sudden, they fast forward to from 2014 to 2016. You remember when like the mass mobs were big going on? People very into sacred architecture and beautiful things and supporting churches and whatnot. So we were going to go to one. And then all of a sudden there was a group email sent out with, in my humble opinion, just super condescending. Like it said, it was like a meme. C is for canceled with Big Bird. And then you read on and it's like, yeah, we're actually not going to see Jesus at the mass mob because the parade is in town. And I checked my calendar and I was like, the parade. And I was like, oh, it's June. I was like, oh, wow, okay. So I tried to strike up a meeting with the local pastor, just assuming, again, in my naivete, form of protection, that, he would be like, no, man, like you can't do that. That's not, you don't choose something that's not of God over the source and summit of our faith. And then I found out that I was being yelled at for noticing. And, I didn't like that because I knew like 100% that I was in the right and that I was handling it with the utmost humility and charity and respect. And so that was a scandal. And I had to walk away from that group after putting years of my life into it. And I learned a lot from that. I learned about sacrifice. I learned about like locus of control, fundamental 101 psychology in my early years of study, like what is your locus of control? Like what can you truly manage and be really clear on what you can and what you cannot. And I looked at the situation and I'm like, yeah, there's just nothing I could have done to change that. But I was going into everything post Mary, with a mission of, pray the rosary every day and spread devotion to Our Lady and make sure that spirituality and prayerfulness is a part of community building, right? Like make sure that it's not just like a social group or a social club. And that was my vision from the second I was a part of that. And I had to learn the hard way that sometimes when things are not in your control, it's never going to be that way because that's not what other people's vision is. So I learned, I regrouped, got involved with Frassati. My absolutely lovely, beautiful, intelligent, incredible wife, Lauren, and I met in 2016. She was already on the core team of Frassati at that point. So we were helping out with the group there. And the calling to Dynamis also happened pretty shortly after that. The bishop stepped up and said that he wanted a specific ministry that had jurisdiction in the 8 counties of Western New York that was specifically parish agnostic, and that he wanted it to be grassroots, like organically developed, never going to get any help financially or anything, but you have all of the authority. And I just thought that was interesting. I was like, man, it takes a really special kind of a, group of motley crew in order to answer that call, because it's almost like Jeremiah, in the Old Testament. Like, it's like, I gave you a calling. I didn't say you were going to succeed. It's like, and it was very intense when that all happened. It all happened very fast. I know I had a number of meetings with, the bishops, and I was told, you are the only one who can do this. I was specifically told, like, you have to fulfill this mission of Dynamis. Like, no one else can do this. So I felt the weight of that. Like I felt like I don't even like how can you say, like, Adam, you're incredibly qualified in so many different ways. Like, how can, I don't, it was weird. I'm like, I had to discern it. I'm like, is this providence? Is this like prophecy? Is this just a moment of urgency? I don't know. But all I knew is my responsibility was to be faithful to it. So I just continued on this journey where God was presenting opportunities to take all of my training throughout my life, which started with being a YMCA counselor. That was my first ever job. Giving life to others, right? Serving, being instrumental and not stuck in some identity mode of woe is me because of what I've been through. I've never been that kind of person. Like I actually struggle with the whole, like the victim currency that's kind of going on nowadays in certain, because those of us who have actually been through extraordinary levels of suffering, it's like there's not even room for that message, because everybody's a victim. So whatever, people can have it.
Listen, I was victimized today because the plow came down the street and buried my van. I woke up, ice. Took me an hour and a half.
It's disgusting.
Just awful.
Why is humanity like this?
Weep for me. Weep for me.
You bet, man. I certainly will. So, yeah. So that's how it kind of concretely started in terms of like, okay, you're getting skin in the game when it comes to ministry. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And learning the good, learning the bad, learning the downright ugly. That same conversation, of course, out of discretion. I'll never mention names or places, but like, the same conversation where I was being gaslighted into being told, like, you're the problem for having a problem with going to that parade. I was also, somehow the concept of the rosary came up. Like, I think I was just like, listen, I pray rosaries. This is what I want to bring to the group. I think that's how it started. And I started getting lectured for that. I was like, why do you pray those rosaries? That's not what the church does anymore. I haven't prayed a rosary in decades, and I'm just fine. And I was like, wait, like, when did this become about you? Like, that's not even what we're here to talk about. And that's when I learned that there's a lot of wounding in the community. There's a lot of confusion about what authentic Catholic identity means. And you can't expect to just be handed, the means to foster the appropriate culture. Right? The culture that's apostolic, the culture that the saints, the example the saints have given us over the years. The seminary model is actually quite new in the grand scheme of the church. It came in the wake of the Council of Trent, but the OG status model is the apprenticeship model, right? The apostleship model, where, and that's why it was always, you have the altar boys and men who are there, because when you have that closer proximity to the sanctuary, that is the apprenticeship model to form priests, right, and clergy. And so there's a lot of people with a lot of different visions about how things are supposed to be. And I learned that if you want to be a culture maker that's in accordance with, the scripture, tradition, and magisterium, you can't expect, there's a philosophical principle. It's called the principle of congruence. You cannot give what you do not have. So, and culture is always downstream from the head. So if the head of whatever hierarchical structure you're dealing with doesn't know or have the principles to lay a specific kind of culture, then it's never going to come from there. And so you have to accept that and be pious and be humble and reverential, and also be honest about the truth of the situation. You can't be an ostrich. You can't just stick your head in the sand. And these are some of the things that Our Lady has warned us about through all of the church-approved apparitions. We didn't even touch on Acadia, October 13th, 1973, when she said there's going to come a time where it's bishop against bishop, cardinal against cardinal, and there's going to come a point where you're not even going to have access to the sacraments anymore. You're just going to have a rosary and a sign from on high. That's why Our Lady keeps hammering to everybody, pray the rosary every day. She's trying to prepare us for this extraordinary time that's coming.
Well, we're already scratching at some of that, but...
Yeah, COVID was a little pre-taste. Yeah, good time. Let me ask you a quick question, just to kick the ball back on your half of the court here. How is your rosary devotional life? Do you do one every day?
Yeah, I just about every day. Some Saturdays I'm not doing one.
Sure.
But mostly every day. What's helpful is on my commutes. So when I'm driving, that's my time to do it. And in the wintertime when I'm doing my shoveling, because down here in the frosty South, it's a lot of time shoveling. But
good. When did you start getting into it?
Well, I actually hated it for a long time because it seemed like I wrote prayer as a teenager. My grandmother was fiercely dedicated to it. And my grandfather had a devotion to the Sacred Heart, and he was dedicated to the Rosary. But my grandmother would come over, and she would babysit us on Friday nights. And so she would come down, and like as we got older, we would be doing the Rosary too, and she'd make us do that. And I remember being like 16, 17, and she'd be like, "Adam, where you going?" I'm like, "Going out with the boys, Graham." You know, like, come on. You know, she's like, "No, you're going to do the Rosary first." I was like, "Oh, come on." You know, I'm like,
kind of like when your dad put you up to this stuff.
I'm like, I don't want to do this. All right, fine, let's do it. And so, all right, we did it, right? And then I was not into it for a long time. But then it was.
Well, did she actually like walk you through it, or was it just kind of like, you got to check this box?
No, she would. I mean, like we would walk through.
Because people need accompaniment, like how to get into the Rosary. And,
Yeah,
and as
I
good
didn't
as it is
have-
to get one in, Decades Make Rosaries and commutes are good, but when you dedicate time without there being that external stimuli, you'll get even more out of it, as I know you well know.
Well, so yeah, but when life is crazy, like you just don't have that time, so you have to
Make the time.
You got to make the time for it.
100%.
So it wasn't until I got into ministry when I really tackled on it, because I was a core member for many years, and like we would do rosaries here and there, and it was intermittent, but I didn't have a dedication to it.
When you
until
say
a
I
lot
was on a
later.
core team for many years, was that at like your home parish or?
Yeah, at my home parish in Nativity. So
nice.
In Orchard Park, I was part of the life team there.
Yeah.
And
Third Dynamis Mess was there.
at Nativity.
Yep.
So going through that process, it wasn't until a lot later, being hired, when I was like, and I remember getting my my invitation to be on staff at St. Greg's, going through the whole process, the interview process, and then having the offer finally given to me. I remember being at an apartment, getting the call from the pastor saying, "Hey, Adam, we would actually love to have you on staff." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Who am I?" I'm like, "I'm just some guy." I'm like, I had to go through 5 interviews for
I'm
that.
literally hearing my inner spirit animal of Jeremy Dolph. He was like a mentor to me when Dynamis was getting started. He actually crafted our famous logo, and he told me the famous line that we all know, right? God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the called.
Well, and that's 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I remember
Love that guy.
hanging out with. I was roommates with him for a long time.
Yeah. I caught most of you. I caught almost half of your guys' episode.
Yeah, he's just an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Talented
Do you still
designer.
you still have the superhero cards from his wedding day?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, aren't those awesome, dude? That was a really cool touch.
On his anniversary this year, I broke him out and sent him a picture of it. I was like,
I thought to do
happy-
that, actually.
"Happy anniversary."
I almost did that to him. We would have both
Save-
done it, dude. That's so weird. I was
Save
picking
it-
up on your vibes,
save it for next
man.
year. Next year.
Well, Jeremy, if you are tuning in, man, my kids got into them this year. I wanted those to last.
That's why I put them away. I've got them tucked away. I was
Yeah,
like,
man.
I was
Dude.
like, the kids are going right.
I can't keep a single board game together with these. I'm like, honey, it's got to go up here, way up there. Like, what is the highest place in our house? We got to keep them there until they're way older. But then we keep having kids, so it's like, when are they ever going to get older?
Our games are actually down low, but we tie the cabinet with rubber bands.
Okay.
And so they're rarely actually in there.
We have rubber bands on deck. We need to adapt.
Did you ever play Pass the Pigs?
No.
So Pass the Pigs, great kids game. you just roll the pigs like die, and depending on how the pig lands, the kids have been eating that up. So awesome game, but I'm glad they're not getting into all the other stuff like the other games because you get pieces all over. Trouble was another thing. Like
dude, that was my mom in my game, man. Growing up,
man,
she was like so addicted to it. I was like, okay, mom, like. All right, you push the thing, and
that's the kid.
And then it gets nostalgic, and you're like, all right, let's play some Trouble,
Kateri could care less about the pieces and all that. She'll throw those around, but popping the bubble.
Oh, yeah. At least that thing's contained,
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you can't play the game, but you could at least do that.
We'll lose all the pieces, and we'll still have the board. We actually just acquired a new Trouble game. It has all the pieces, so we're trying to keep all the pieces together.
I'll pray for you.
Yeah, we're not going to be that successful at it, but it's going to be an awesome button presser for Levi and Kateri for a while.
Yeah, man. Wasn't Adam Pasternak there too?
Yeah. No, not in the apartment.
No. I mean at the wedding. I think we all. met.
I'm sure.
I think we all met then.
Yeah. What a good dude.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, I'm going to have to reach out to him soon and get him on the cast because he's a brilliant guy.
Don't mind if I have him on as well.
No,
we got to share the love.
Feast it.
Yeah.
But going back to that moment when I hung up with our pastor, and I was like, I'm gonna have to be a lot better than I am right now. Like just thoroughly as a man, thoroughly in my spirituality. Like I have to level up. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I need to start taking my prayer a lot more serious.
Yes.
And faithfully Catholic, I'm going to mass, I'm reading scripture, like I'm praying, but I'm like, I gotta make sure that I'm capable of leading people, and I gotta lead by example. So like, I need to get to confession much more. I need to pick up the Bible, not just like, like this will be a good moment to do it. Like I need to just start like really reading scripture, like putting that into my prayer life. And the rosary came quickly after that because, I hearkened back to time with Grandma, and I was like, I think Grandma's onto something here. And
they often are.
Yeah, and it wasn't until it was actually very shortly after that I was going through my parents' basement because they had stuff. They're always handing stuff out and like, get your stuff out of here. So they handed off a bunch of stuff from elementary school. And I found in there a sheet of paper that it was like a certificate of completion of my consecration to Mary. Right?
No way.
It was I think it was first grade, right? Maybe first or second grade.
They had you do that then. You're supposed to be praying.
I don't remember that, right?
But I don't mean to interrupt your story. I'll be super quick here. This is a pet peeve of mine. There's some really great modern resources out there. Everyone loves Father Michael Gately, MIC, and I love it too. It does not clearly make the case like the OG St. Louis de Montfort in there that you're supposed to be praying the daily rosary as a part of being consecrated to Mary. I've noticed this modern phenomenon that's foreign to church tradition, that people bang out a book, they say the prayer, they think they're consecrated, it's like some passive thing, and then they move on to the next consecration or they move on to some other devotion. That is not authentic Marian devotion. Like when you're consecrated to Mary, you're supposed to be praying the rosary every day for the rest of your life. And that's one of the things that with the Rich Dawn and really when Dynamis as a precursor to this chapter in life, we found a way to share that in a way that's non-confrontational, just like get excited about it, like, hey, the Mother of God wants this of you because she cares about you, and and it's super good for you. And when you present it to people in the right way and you give them the right tools and the resources and the right direction, it's hard for me to quantify how many people have committed to true consecration to Mary with daily rosaries for life in the Western New York community as a result of our ministry efforts, but it's at least in the dozens. And so I just really hope that people understand that. You're supposed to take a consecration extremely seriously. That's like almost like making a religious vow. Like that's serious stuff. Like you need to go through specific steps to undo that. Like, you can't just undo that yourself. Just to give you an idea of how the gravity of that.
Well, and I think that comes back to part of what your mission is, right? Is to be able to invite people into that.
Right.
And I think that invitation is something that people just don't even hear frequently enough, let alone understand some of the potency behind it, of understanding like, hey, know it and believe it and then do it,
Yeah.
And
I think one of the ways to gamify it is to, at least maybe for the men especially, not to freak anybody out, but when you're in spiritual warfare ministry, like, you don't have the privilege of, and I mean this both as a practitioner and on behalf of what goes on with the energumen. You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose the warfare. Like, the warfare is there, the suffering is there. You have to like crawl your way out of it. You are utterly dependent on God. Like, you either become dependent on God like with every fabric of your being, or you're going down. And so I think for the men, one thing I've seen works very well for the men is to realize like, hey, there are Masonic forces and all these other forces, like concerted, organized criminal efforts to destroy the Catholic Church, to destroy our souls. They're basically the agents of Satan, right? Like the demons are working through them. The war is not with flesh, Ephesians 6:12, but it's real. And so you can respond to that with like, oh man, this is what they're trying to keep from me? Nah, not happening, So anyway, I've seen that works very well for people. Because there is a concerted effort in satanic circles to anything but God, anything but Catholicism, anything but the Rosary, Yeah,
and I don't have high exposure to these groups, but I've certainly seen what the curses do generationally. I've heard my mom tell stories about that from being in Burning Bush, where they've got a lot of prayer to do, because a lot of these pieces are out there. So going back here, though, back to the original question: how did you decide what pieces you wanted to start first here? So you've got a YouTube channel. Now you've got other pieces in motion here. Like what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
How did you pray your way into it? And how did you start, like, what actions came first?
I appreciate the question, man. Yeah. So, I said earlier in this conversation that I kind of like discovered late that I'm an entrepreneur. And, to contextualize that further, with my childlike vigor, being introduced to experiencing the divine by reading the Bible at such a young age, being healed by him, being transformed. I always had a childlike excitement about what proclaiming and living the kingdom of God on earth means, like what it looks like, what it feels like. I always loved the notion of, Francis of Assisi is my patron. I'm deeply, deeply Franciscan in my spirituality. And I love, living voluntary poverty. I love the idea of having a ragtag group of ragamuffins, like 12 maybe, and just changing the world. I was in Israel with Taylor Marshall. He's, the number one YouTuber in our realm of all time, over 1 million subs at this point. We spent a lot of time together. And I remember when Capernaum, what's that?
Sorry, just a side note here.
Yeah.
When are you getting him on the podcast?
It might happen. We're in touch. But, I don't expect anything. He, that's actually another conversation for another time, man. But just to be totally upfront, because, I'm a straight shooter. Not long after we spent that time together, he went real pro SSPX, which was very strange because, I've taken a vow to the magisterium. I've taken an oath when I taught at Chesterton Academy. You had Jesse on, the current headmaster. We laid the groundwork before he took over. I was the head of marketing for them, all over getting them on the map and all the different news stations and everything. And when all of that stuff happened, I had to remember the vow that I made to the magisterium. Like, you're not allowed to be pro certain things without consequences. I mean, that's not, no one on earth has that kind of authority. So we all need prayer. We all need prayer. It could happen to any of us. You know what I mean? We are all a removed grace away from becoming the next Hitler. Like, all of us. That's true humility. Like, understanding the fact that anything could happen to any of us. That's why you've got the prayer of the Pharisee and then the prayer of the publican, right? Like, one of them's like, oh, thank goodness I'm not like those people. Like the trads. Thank goodness I'm not like the Novus Ordoites. Thank goodness I'm not like the trads. Thank goodness I'm not like the pagans or the non-believers. It's like, what are you talking about? You're removed grace away from being just like that. And then you got the publican that's like, look, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Kyrie eleison. Like, let me just keep a low profile here because I'm not the master. So anyways, thank you for the question. But so it all just kind of continued to develop, man. It just developed. It was a recognition looking back that a lot of the things that God inspired me to do and gave me intuition here or there and a lot of knowledge and experience. And of course, adapting, overcoming, learning from mistakes. I just knew that I needed to live the gospel. That's literally it. It's super simple. You're supposed to, like, the catechism talks about this. The magisterium talks about this all over the place. Being a theologian means this, right? Like, a true theologian is somebody, it's the study of God, right? It's funny. Like, no one's truly a master or a doctor of theology. No, you're not a master of God. Like, you will always be the student. But, the mission is to know God, love God, and serve God, right? So you read the Bible, you get to know him through the word, and you try to figure out how to just literally live it. Like, we're supposed to be living as if here in the 21st century, we're still living the book of Acts. That's why you still have people. That's like, think of John the Baptist. They refer to him as a new Elijah. Some say there will be a new St. Francis of Assisi someday. Maybe he's walking among us right now. We're called to be continually living. Ecclesiastes 1:9-10 says there's nothing new under the sun, right? We're just supposed to live that message. So I discovered I was an entrepreneur because I always loved the idea of just being a monk and living as a religious. I thought I was going to be a priest before I got married. And I'm very thankful for the vocation I have. And, I said my parents divorced when I was 2. I've got 4 children to date, and 3 of them are older than 2 at this point. So I have threefold thus far brought my children farther than anything I ever got to experience. And that means everything to me. You know what I mean? So, obviously priorities, focusing on one's duties and states in life, husband first, father second, everything else after that. But as I continued to just desire to live like Christ, to completely die to myself and to put on that new man for others, or as St. Paul says, to become all things to all men. I loved the idea, like St. Francis of Assisi. Did you know that he had 12 brothers, just like Christ did?
No.
He had 12 brothers. This was always like kind of my vision. It's just, I don't know, call it dorky if you want, but I don't know, like, why would you not want to live just like the OG? Like, be like Christ and have a group of leaders and save the world. You know what I mean? It's the coolest thing you could ever do. So I just always thought that would be neat. And then I discovered, like, my patron, Francis, did that. He had 12 followers who were his fellow leaders. One of them became a Judas, just like Jesus. It was actually the second leader, and it was because it was all about finances. Just like Judas had that challenge, among others. So you see how there's this pattern of just making the gospel real in this life. And that's what we're all called to do. So I just kept doing it. And as I did it, and I was a leader of a bunch of different souls, that, again, there was never any money involved. We never got any support from anybody. I mean, I was doing essentially full-time worth of ministry, like young adult ministry. And not only did I never get a dime, but I actually put 5 figures of my own money into it. And just because I knew it was the right thing to do. Part of it was also doing penance for my past life before I understood that Catholicism was the answer. And continuing to adapt and work towards that. But so the Rich Dawn came about because I just got a letter from the diocese very recently commending my obedience and my faithfulness and the things that I've done for the community. And I was asked to expand my services further. And it's reached a point where it's like between all of the clients in Burning Bush and all of the young adult ministry that I've done with Dynamis and forming a leadership team we're referred to as the Ecclesians, which is a play off of ecclesia, right? The church, those who build up the church. You know, as you probably know from entrepreneurship school, like usually the entrepreneurs that are successful are the ones that focus, right? Really focus, chisel out like a masterpiece, and then maybe move on or scale or whatever the thing is. The people who are doing a ton of different things tend to dissipate more. They don't tend to be as successful. And, you know, that was one of those like heaping failure piles that I had to climb over and learn. And also just being super honest with the reality that as much as I enjoyed living a Pauline spirituality, like I like to put on spiritualities over time. Sometimes I'm Pauline, sometimes I'm mostly Franciscan in my core, but I like to say I'm Franciscan in my poverty and service. I'm Dominican in the way that I teach and preach. I'm Carmelite in the way that I pray. I'm Benedictine in the way that I, run ministry in terms of order and having a rule. I mean, why not take the best from the best, right? We all know time is the one thing you can't get back, but the one life hack to that, to kind of like force multiply your time, is to aggregate the magnum opus life work of all the greatest thinkers and take it all together and then create something out of that, right? So that's obviously what all the greats do. So why would we not do that with our faith? So I just kind of kept putting the pieces together and adapting and learning and walking with people. I mean, that's number one, is being empathetic for a soul, caring about souls, crafting those Exodus 90 frats, learning how to continually motivate and inspire people not to give up, not to cut corners and cheat or to be discouraged and all of these things. And, that's just accompaniment, right? Just walking with a soul and understanding them, understanding their Catholic temperament. Are you sanguine? Are you choleric? Are you phlegmatic? Are you melancholic? And what does that mean? Because every one of those always has a like pros and cons and propensities that people are much more naturally good at certain things, whether that's virtue or vice, right? And being able to identify that when you become very adept at the temperaments, you can look at someone and you can figure out their temperament almost immediately. Like it's in the way that you carry your face. It's in the way that you walk. Your gait gives it away. There's a lot of psychological plays in terms of like temperament. So I became super adept at that a long time ago. And all of these techniques helped me to learn how to serve people and to empower them to maximize their stats, right? Their virtue stats. So that's like the ultimate video game. If I were ever to craft a video game, it'd be like, remember Fable? Oh, yeah. Way back in the day, like I would love to see an overtly Catholic Fable, like it where there's literally like angels and demons and the saints, and you can level up and depending on the choices you make, but you can actually see the 64 virtues as St. Thomas Aquinas laid them out in the Secunda Secundae, and what the vices are.
You're the RIT guy.
That's right? What some people know me as.
So you can make that game.
I could circle the wagons if I needed to. Yeah.
The Rich Dawn game.
I don't know about that. Well, right now, maybe. I mean, if the Lord gives me a proper prompting, man, who am I to get in the way of the vision?
Okay, well, you heard it here first, folks. So, I'm going to need like 5% for just stirring it up.
Yeah, that's I'll give you 7.
Oh, you're very generous.
Well,
God bless you.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot all joking aside, man, you've done a lot over the years, being that sage, being available for people, and, just sharing of your gift of self and your ability to discern and to give tips in the ministry life.
Well, praise God for that. But
glory to him, right?
He's the one at work. I'm just an instrument.
Yeah.
But one of the so maybe to kind of wrap this up because we're rolling. But tell us what your next steps are here. What are you hoping to achieve? What do you want to do? Like where's your vision so far? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah. So I've kind of gone backwards. If in the you're a coach, I'm a coach. In the secular coaching realm, the play for a lot of people, just speaking raw business here for a second, is, you might like get one-on-one clients. You got a niche down. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you figure it out. You have something that you like, but the market doesn't bear. You adapt to that and all of that, right? I mean, I've figured these things out a long time ago in terms of what works for me, but people tend to start by doing that. They take on a lot of one-on-one clients, and then they might graduate to group coaching. And then, which is a way to both add value to more people sooner, but then also it's, it can be easier on the coach, and it's, more manageable of your time and your monetary resources. And then, the play is like package something, right? Like package like a teaching program, because then you can potentially generate passive income. I've kind of gone in the complete opposite direction. Like I don't recommend people do things the way I do it, by the way. I'm not sitting here acting like this is the blueprint. But for me, honest to goodness, man, like I just love serving people. I'm coming up on 300 group coaching sessions. I've got over 1,000 hours of coaching under my belt. Like I ain't no spring chicken when it comes to this, but I get energy from the one-on-one clients. I enjoy it a lot. I really do. Because, and we continue to offer the group coaching with Dynamis. You were one of my early ones. Not you were in like year 2 in 2019 when you came the one time.
Yeah.
And so, we've been doing this for a long time, but I would like to see more people truly own the reality that you ought to know and live the 9 levels of prayer, the 3 kinds of grace, the 7 heavenly virtues. In other words, the blueprints of sanctity, the blueprints of sainthood, how to become a saint and how to do it quicker. What are all the holy shortcuts, so, and one-on-one work is just, I don't see that getting exhausting for me. You know what I mean? Like, did Padre Pio retire? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's the secular way of coaching, looking at it. People got the ICF certs and they're handing those out to countless witches and people that will literally put a demon in you and get paid to do it. And then there's the Catholic life coaches like you and me, where it's like, I don't really care about passive income. Like, if it's a means to an end that God blesses me with someday, great, but that's not necessarily in line with my Franciscan spirituality. And if somebody always thought I'd be a monk, like, I don't know, like being Christ for others on a mystical level like Padre Pio is like, you're in the confessional for 18 hours a day. Like, and you're bilocating, and he did about 16 to 17 rosaries a day. That was his average. So you might be trilocating, right? A lot of people don't know that's, and Padre Pio's taught the secret, by the way, behind bilocating. I don't know if a lot of people, do you know the secret to how to bilocate?
No.
You don't know? I'm
going to guess it's probably something to do with Jesus.
I mean, yeah,
no, I don't know.
That's a very good guess. I'll give you a more precise hint. Your guardian angel. Yeah. So anyways, You know what? As we wrap here, so yeah, that's what I've got going on. I'm scaling the one-on-one coaching. People can go to therichdon.com. For anybody in the Western New York area, 716 Pro Life is the number. Call 716 Pro Life for professional life services with Kyle Dean. So, you know, those are the resources that people can utilize. But I just want to close, Adam, with one final testimony and then a gift. So, the testimony is. Did you? I don't think I've told you this yet. Padre Pio gifted this to me earlier this year.
How's that?
So,
first of all, maybe explain what you're showing
well,
here.
I've never revealed this publicly before, but if anybody looks at therichdon.com and the different branding and whatever that we're developing, you'll notice this symbol. This has actually been given to me by Padre Pio. And I didn't know what it meant at first. So what happened was, this is the beginning of the year, you know, I post certification. It was Dan Lawson actually that told me, you gotta just get the certification. You've already got, I mean, I've got a doctorate's worth of credit. I've got over 210 college credits under the belt, psychology, philosophy, theology. So it's all good in the professional aspect, but in the experiential aspect, so there was this woman who's a friend of my mom, and I got to know her. She's talking to me, and she says, she finds out that I have this deep devotion to Padre Pio. I named my firstborn son after Padre Pio's birth name. And, you know, I just absolutely love the guy. May 25th, 1887 to September 23rd, 1968. Stigmatic for 50 years. Only Catholic priest that we know of who had the stigmata. So many mysteries there. And she was hearing me go on about this, and she was like, I have something from you that's from Padre Pio. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I'm one of Padre Pio's spiritual daughters. When I was a little girl, I grew up in San Giovanni Rotondo. And when I was a little girl, Padre Pio handed me this necklace, and he said, you're going to give this to a specific person someday. And she gave it to me. She's crying while she's giving it to me. Because, I mean, it was a big deal for her. I just met her. And she gave up something that she's been holding on to her entire life. She's, you know, I don't want to date a woman, but she, you know, she's up in age now. And so I had it throughout the year, and I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And then I found out that this is the universal symbol for life coaches. The tree of life with a circle around it. And it just so happened that my current spiritual director is a deep devotee of Padre Pio as well. And he further contextualized it for me. And he was like, yeah, Padre Pio had a huge devotion to the tree of life. He loved to hand these out because it was under a tree that he received his stigmata at first. That must have been when he was 23, because he had it, asked for it to go away, and then it came back at 31. And also, like, so his mystical experiences started happening under a tree, and his stigmata happened under a tree. So he was huge on spreading devotion to the tree of life. So it hit me that Padre Pio was asking me to be a life coach. And I said, okay, wait a minute. What I've always been this whole time, it'd be nice to be a monk and to be a, you know, like run a religious order or something, but that's not my state in life. I'm a husband. I'm a father. You know, Opus Dei does a pretty good job of that, but it's pretty rare in the life of the church to see people do both of those things. They're typically distinct vocations. But life coaching, right, helping people to define and align their goals is a way to serve, build up the kingdom of Christ on earth. And as we well know, John Paul and others have written about this, the dignity of work, right? We have a right to be blessed for our blessing. So in order for me to be obedient to my diocese continually, as I've been, just constantly giving of myself, we're taking the leap of faith. Our family's taking the leap of faith, and we're going full time with this because it's the only way that we've already given so much of our time for the past decade that going full time with this life coaching is how we're going to be able to answer that call.
There you go. And there's many people out there that need it. So
yeah.
Amen.
I mean, if you had 30 clients, if I had 30 clients, right? Even the market rates nowadays, we'd be feeding our family no problem. maybe even putting something aside for the future, and that would be 60 souls. Right? The latest stats in our diocese are that there are about 60,000 engaged souls still, 600,000 on paper, but 60,000 involved. Right? 60 ain't even a percent of that. So we got a lot of work to do.
That's the call.
Amen, brother. And with that, man, I want to, you've given so much of yourself for me over the years. I want to give something to you. I gave you a little sign on the inside cover. Feel free to check it out later or whenever you want. But this is one of the most powerful tools I've used over the years in ministry. Have you heard of this, or do you already have this?
No.
So this
Humility
is
of the Heart.
Humility of Heart by Kajetan. He's up for canonization right now. And what you will find in there are 153 pithy, distinct meditations on the virtue of humility, which of course is the virtue that cuts to the root of pride itself. And as Ecclesiasticus, or the book of Sirach 10:15 states, any and all sin is actually pride. So humility is one of those life hack virtues that if you can master it, it just kind of automatically brings up your stats in all the other areas. So we've done a lot of work with souls over the years with these, seen a lot of great results, and I wanted to bless you with that.
Thank you very much. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on here. And for anybody following along here, tune into the Rich Don. You also have a YouTube channel that's definitely worth checking out. So,
yeah, we'd love to have you on, man.
Yeah, maybe sometime in the spring.
Yeah,
so
I want to hear the rest of the story about consecration, first grade, and everything else, man.
Well, amen. Story for another time.
Oh, man.
Well, hey, thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. And hopefully we'll catch you next time. Got a lot of great things that are coming up, including the men's retreat coming up this August in Acadia. So we're hitting up the first national park of the series. So super pumped for that. But hey, God bless you guys. And we will see you next time. God bless.